Have you ever, thought about what it would mean to see a video of yourself online saying something totally crazy or doing something completely out of character, like something you never actually did?
Oh, yeah.
That's the kind of unsettling stuff we're going to look at today as we do a deep dive into deepfakes.
Yeah, it's a bit of a rabbit hole.
It is right. And you know me, I love a good rabbit hole when it comes to AI.
Absolutely.
But before we go too far down that hole, let's start with the basics. What exactly are deepfakes?
So deepfakes, they're synthetic media, which basically means they're not real footage. They're created using AI to manipulate images and videos, and you can even do audio. So a deepfake could make someone appear to say or do something that they never actually did.
Okay, I'm already getting chills just thinking about that. And you mentioned AI.
Right.
That reminds me of all those sci-fi movies where robots take over the world. So
Yeah.
what kind of AI is actually behind these deepfakes?
It's not quite robots taking over the world, thankfully. Deepfakes use a specific type of AI called deep learning, and in particular, something called generative adversarial networks, or GANs.
Jans. So is that where the fake part comes in?
It's where the magic happens. Imagine you have these two master forgers, and one of them is constantly trying to create the perfect counterfeit, and the other one is laser focused on spotting those fakes.
Okay, I can see where this is going.
Right, so you've got this constant back and forth, this competition that makes both of these forgers incredibly skilled. The one creating the fakes gets better and better at mimicking the real deal, and the one detecting them becomes more attuned to the subtle flaws. That's essentially how GANs work. You have two AI algorithms that are battling it out. One is generating content, and the other one is trying to detect if it's real, and it's this process that allows them to produce these incredibly convincing fakes.
So it's like an AI arms race, each side pushing the other to get more and more sophisticated.
Exactly.
No wonder deepfakes are getting so realistic these days.
And alarmingly accessible. What used to be a kind of a niche technical field is now in reach for anyone with a little bit of tech savvy. You can even find apps that let you create basic deepfakes.
Whoa, really?
Yeah.
See, that's what fascinates me and freaks me out at the same
Yeah.
time. It's so powerful, this technology, and it's spreading so quickly.
Yeah.
But, before we get into all the dangers, and I know I have a ton of questions,
Yeah.
could you maybe clarify something for me? Are all deepfakes videos? Because I feel like I mostly see those crazy videos of celebrities or politicians saying things they never said.
Yeah, that's a common misconception. While deepfakes, they often show up as videos.
Yeah.
They're not limited to just that. We're talking about manipulating images and audio as well.
Oh, that's right. So you could have a deepfake audio recording of someone's voice
Yeah,
saying something they never actually said.
precisely. And you can imagine that opens up a whole new realm of dangers.
Okay, that is seriously unsettling. And I know we're going to talk about all that, but just real quick, I want to make sure our listener is clear on the full scope you mentioned, that deepfakes aren't always perfect, that they often have flaws. Can you maybe give us an example of what to look for? I mean, if these things are getting so good, how are we supposed to spot them?
You're right. Some deepfakes are becoming very difficult to tell apart from real content,
Right.
but they're not foolproof. One thing to watch out for is inconsistencies in lighting or shadows. Sometimes the lighting on the face won't match the background or the shadows might be off. Another red flag is unnatural blinking or eye movements. Deepfakes often struggle with replicating those subtle nuances of human expressions, particularly around the eyes.
Interesting. So we should be paying close attention to those micro expressions.
Exactly.
It's like a deepfake tell.
It is. And sometimes if you look really closely, you might notice blurring or artifacts around the edges of the face where the deepfake has been kind of blended onto the original image or video.
Okay, taking notes here, lighting shadows, eye movements, blurring. It sounds like we need to become deepfake detectives.
Yeah.
But even with all of these tips, I got to admit, it's pretty scary thinking about how easy it is to be fooled.
It's definitely a valid concern, and I think that brings us to the heart of what we're talking about today, the dangers of deepfakes.
Yes, let's unpack that. I think everyone listening has a sense that, this technology can be misused, but what are the real world dangers we're talking about here?
Well, one of the most obvious, but probably the most alarming, is the potential for spreading misinformation on a massive scale.
Oh yeah, you're talking about fake news propaganda, manipulating public opinion. This sounds like something straight out of a dystopian novel.
It's a real threat, and it's happening right now. Deepfakes can be used to fabricate evidence, create fake scandals, or even incite violence, and it's not just everyday people. Imagine the implications of a deepfake video of a world leader making inflammatory statements.
Yeah.
Imagine a president declaring war, for example.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's terrifying. It could literally spark international conflict. It feels like we're teetering on the edge of chaos here.
It's a very real concern, and it's not the only one. Deepfakes can also be used for something much more personal and insidious: identity theft.
Okay, now we're getting into my nightmare territory.
Think about it. Someone could steal your identity and access your bank accounts just with a convincing deepfake video.
Right.
Or they could use a deepfake to ruin your reputation, spreading lies that are almost impossible to debunk.
It's like a weaponized form of impersonation. It feels so
Yeah.
violating. I mean, how do you even begin to defend yourself against something like that?
That's the challenge, and that's something we'll dig into further as we go deeper into this deep dive.
Okay, good, because right now I'm feeling a little overwhelmed by the sheer scale of this. So we've got global chaos, personal ruin. Is there anything else we need to add to the list of deepfake dangers?
Unfortunately, yes. Let's not forget the impact on politics. I mean, we already have enough trouble figuring out what's true and what's not in our current political climate.
Oh, yeah. Tell me about it.
Deepfakes could erode trust in elections and public figures even further, making it almost impossible to know what's real and what's fake. Imagine a close election swayed by a deepfake video that discredits a candidate at the last minute.
Oh, man, that's chilling. It's like deepfakes are weaponizing doubt itself.
In a way, they exploit our trust in what we see and hear, turning our own senses against us.
Okay, I'm officially spooked. But, this is the deep dive, and we like to go beyond the hypothetical. Are there any real-world examples of deepfakes causing this kind of havoc, things that really show just how serious this threat is?
There have already been a few high-profile cases that really show how much harm this can cause. For example, there was a deepfake video of a politician making a false statement that went viral, and it really hurt his reputation. A lot of people believed it was real, and it took weeks to prove that the video was fake. By then, the damage was done.
Wow. I vaguely remember hearing about that, but I had no idea it was a deepfake.
Yeah.
It's scary how easily we can be fooled,
Right.
even when we think we're being critical.
That's why it's so important to be aware. But it's not just politics. We've also seen a rise in deepfakes of celebrities being used in inappropriate content,
Yeah.
often without their consent.
That's just awful.
Yeah.
It's straight up exploitation. And
Yeah.
it really brings up another layer to all of this, the ethical side of things. Even if a deepfake isn't used for something explicitly harmful, like, spreading misinformation or stealing someone's identity, it can still be deeply unethical.
Absolutely. The ethical questions surrounding deepfakes are just as complicated and important as the technological ones, and it's definitely something we need to look into further.
Okay, good, because right now my head is spinning with all these potential dangers, and I'm sure our listeners feeling it too. So before we go any deeper, let's take a breath and recap what we've learned so far.
That sounds like a good plan.
All right, so deepfakes, we've established they're not some futuristic sci-fi concept.
No.
They're here, they're real, and they're already causing problems.
Yeah.
They use AI, specifically those JANs we talked about, to create these incredibly realistic fake videos, images, or even audio recordings. And the dangers, well, we've got a full laundry list of those.
Misinformation, manipulation, identity theft, damage to reputations, political chaos.
Right.
And those are just the ones we've talked about so far.
Exactly. And we haven't even touched on the ethical implications yet. So to our listener, if you're not already creeped out, you should be. Deepfakes are a real and present danger, and it feels like we're just scratching the surface of their potential impact.
We are just getting started, and as we dig deeper, we'll explore not only the dark side of deepfakes, but also some potential solutions, the things that people are doing to combat this threat, and what you can do to protect yourself.
So buckle up, listener, because this deep dive is about to get even more intense.
Welcome back. I know we left things on a pretty scary note,
We're gig.
but I promise it's not all doom and gloom.
Okay, good, because I'm ready for some good news. So we've just established that deepfakes are a serious threat. But what can we do about it? Is there any hope in this fight?
Absolutely. There's a lot of promising stuff happening. One of the most important is in detection tools. Companies like Microsoft are developing software that can actually analyze videos for signs of manipulation.
Right, I've heard of that. I think Microsoft's is called Video Authenticator.
That's the one. It uses AI to detect those subtle inconsistencies in videos that might point to a deepfake. Remember all those tells we talked about earlier? The lighting, the eye movements, the blurring. This software is designed to pick up on all those little things that we might miss as humans.
So it's like AI fighting fire with fire.
Exactly. And there are other solutions coming out as well. We're seeing more legislation and regulations aimed at setting some ground rules for how deepfakes can be used and holding people accountable for using them in bad ways.
So lawmakers are starting to take this seriously.
It's definitely gaining traction, but of course, legislation takes time and technology moves really fast. That's why public awareness and media literacy are so important.
You're talking about teaching people how to spot a deepfake, how to think critically about what they see online, basically, not just believing everything they see at face value.
Exactly. We need to give people the tools to be smarter about the information they're consuming in this age of deepfakes.
Okay, I'm totally on board with that. Critical thinking skills should be like mandatory in school.
I agree.
Everyone should know how to evaluate information, especially online. But let's go back to those detection tools for a second.
Mhm.
How effective are they really? I mean, if deepfakes are getting more and more sophisticated, harder to spot, can these tools even keep up?
That's the million-dollar question, and the honest answer is it's an ongoing race. As deepfakes get better, the detection tools have to get better too. It's this constant game of cat and mouse.
Right.
Some of these tools are really good at identifying the more basic deepfakes, but the really advanced ones are getting tougher to catch. That's why we need to use a bunch of different strategies to fight this.
So detection tools are part of the solution, but we can't rely on them completely.
Right.
What about those legislative efforts you mentioned? Are there any specific laws or regulations in the works that could really help put a stop to all these deepfakes?
It's still early days, but there are a few interesting things happening. California, for instance, passed a law making it illegal to share non-consensual deepfake pornography.
Interesting.
And Texas has a law that bans using deepfakes to hurt or defraud people.
Okay, so they're starting to address the specific ways deepfakes can be used for harm.
Right.
But what about the bigger issue of misinformation and manipulation? Can you even make laws against that without, like, stepping on people's right to free speech?
That's the really tough part. It's a balancing act, trying to protect people from harm while still upholding free speech. Some people think we should just label deepfakes clearly, like a warning label, so people know that what they're seeing isn't real.
Okay.
Others want tougher penalties for people who create and share deepfakes with the intention to deceive or hurt others.
It seems like a total minefield, legally and ethically. And it makes me think about those celebrity deepfakes we talked about before. Is there anything being done to protect people from having their image used in deepfakes without their consent?
That's a complicated issue, and the laws around it are still developing. Some people believe that individuals should have more control over how their image and voice are used, especially when it comes to deepfakes. They argue that using someone's face or voice without their permission, even if it seems harmless, violates their privacy.
I can see that it's like stealing someone's identity, even if it's just their digital self.
Right.
But I also imagine there are free speech issues with, like, regulating this too heavily. It's a thorny issue for sure.
It is, and it shows how important the ethical considerations are alongside the legal and technological ones.
Speaking of ethics, I know we've touched on it a little bit, but I think it deserves a deeper dive. What are some of the key ethical concerns around deepfakes?
One of the most basic ethical questions is consent.
Mhm.
Deepfakes often use someone's likeness without their permission.
Right.
It violates their privacy and their autonomy, especially when it's used in harmful or exploitative ways.
It just feels wrong to use someone's image or voice in a way they never agreed to.
It is, and then there's the broader issue of truth and trust.
Yeah.
If we can't trust what we see and hear, how can we make informed decisions? How can we trust the media or politicians or even our own eyes and ears?
That's a really good point. Deepfakes undermine trust on a fundamental level, making us question everything.
Right.
And that's a dangerous thing in a society that's already dealing with so much misinformation and division.
It's like deepfakes are injecting chaos into reality itself.
And that chaos can have real consequences.
Absolutely. It can lead to social unrest, political instability, even violence. Imagine a deepfake video that falsely shows a protest turning violent. It could be used to justify cracking down on peaceful protests or even incite retaliation.
Whoa, okay, I'm definitely feeling the weight of this now. It's not just about funny videos of celebrities swapped into movies. This is serious stuff.
It is, and that's why it's so important to talk about this, to make people aware and to grapple with the ethical side of things alongside the technology.
Right, so what are some of the things people are doing to address these ethical concerns?
There's a growing movement to develop ethical guidelines for creating and using deepfakes. This means setting clear boundaries around consent, transparency, and accountability, for example. Some researchers want a system where creators would have to embed digital watermarks or other markers in their deepfakes to show that the content isn't real.
That's an interesting idea, like a digital signature that says, hey, this is a deep fake, don't believe everything you see. Would that help with detection efforts too?
Those markers could make it easier for detection tools to flag suspicious content, but there are also concerns about whether such a system could be easily bypassed.
Right. I mean, if someone's creating a deep fake to do something bad, they're probably not going to go out of their way to label it as a deep fake.
Exactly. It's a complex challenge with no easy solution.
Okay, so ethical guidelines, digital watermarks, all of that's important. But it also feels like we need like a bigger cultural shift. We need to be more critical of what we see online, more aware of the potential for manipulation.
Absolutely. Media literacy is essential in the age of deepfakes. We need to teach people how to identify deepfakes, how to question the source of information, how to look for more evidence, and to think critically about what they see and hear online.
It's like we all need to become deepfake detectives, constantly looking for clues and red flags.
Oh, exactly.
I like that analogy. But I'm curious, what about the platforms where deepfakes are often shared, like social media video sharing sites? What role do they play in this whole fight?
They have a huge responsibility. We need them to have stricter rules for identifying, flagging, and taking down deepfakes that are intended to deceive or harm.
So more proactive moderation, fact-checking, and maybe even warnings to users when they're looking at something that could be fake.
All of that and more. Some platforms are even trying out AI tools to automatically detect and flag deepfakes. But it's a constant arms race. As soon as they come up with a new way to detect them, the people creating deepfakes find new ways to get around it.
Ugh, it sounds exhausting, like playing whack-a-mole with misinformation.
It's definitely a challenge, but I'm hopeful that with a combination of technology, ethical guidelines, laws, and public education, we can find ways to deal with the risks of deepfakes.
Okay, I appreciate your optimism, and I think you've laid out a pretty good plan for tackling this threat. But before we move on, I want to go back to something you said earlier about how technology is always changing.
Right.
What are some of the new things happening in deepfake technology? Are things getting better or worse?
It's a little bit of both, to be honest. The technology is constantly evolving, and while there have been improvements in detecting and mitigating deepfakes, they're also getting more sophisticated and easier to create.
Ugh, that's not what I wanted to hear. Just what we needed more realistic and easier to make deepfakes.
I know it's not great news, but it's the reality we have to deal with.
Okay, so deepfakes are getting more realistic. What are some of the things that are making them so convincing? I mean, I've seen some of these videos online, and it's honestly mind-blowing how real they look.
One area where things are getting better is the quality of the generated content. The latest deepfake algorithms can produce incredibly lifelike videos and audio that are almost impossible to tell apart from the real thing. And it's not just the visuals that are improving. The audio synthesis is becoming incredibly realistic too. You can now create deepfake audio that sounds just like someone's real voice.
I've heard about that it's scary to think that someone can make a fake recording of my voice saying anything they want.
Mm.
Imagine the potential for blackmail or
Yeah.
spreading false information.
It is a scary thought, and as the technology gets better, we can expect to see even more subtle and sophisticated manipulations.
Okay, so the deepfakes themselves are getting better, but you also mentioned that they're becoming easier to make. What's driving that?
A few things are happening. First, there's more open source deepfake software and code libraries available.
Okay.
This means that anyone with a little bit of technical know-how can download the tools and start making their own deepfakes. You don't need a degree in computer science anymore.
Right.
And there are even user-friendly apps and online services that let you create basic deepfakes with just a few clicks.
Wow, so it's becoming more accessible to everyone, which is both exciting and terrifying.
Exactly. It opens up all sorts of creative possibilities, but it also increases the potential for misuse.
Okay, this is a lot to take in. So deepfakes are getting more realistic, easier to create, and harder to detect. It's starting to feel like we're fighting a losing battle.
It's definitely a challenge, but remember, the fight against deepfakes isn't just about technology, it's also about awareness, educating people, and encouraging critical thinking.
You're right, we can't just rely on technology to fix this. We need
Yeah.
to help people be smarter about the information they consume.
Exactly. We need to teach people how to spot deepfakes, how to question where information comes from, and to think critically about what they see and hear online.
Okay, I like that empowering people to be more aware and discerning is crucial. But I'm still curious about the future of deepfake technology itself. Where do you see all of this going? What does the future hold?
That's the question that keeps a lot of experts up at night.
I bet it's tough to predict the future, especially with technology that's changing so quickly.
Exactly. But based on what we're seeing now, we can think about a few possible scenarios.
Okay, let's put on our futurist hats. What are some of the possibilities?
One scenario is that deepfake technology gets so good that it's basically impossible to detect.
Okay.
In this world, we're living in a post-truth era where we can't tell the difference between real and fake.
That's a scary thought. A world where we can't trust anything we see or hear. It's like something out of a sci-fi dystopia.
It's definitely a dystopian possibility, but there's also another scenario where we develop really good detection tools and ethical guidelines that effectively deal with the risks of deepfakes.
So a more optimistic outcome, where we find a way to live with this powerful technology.
Exactly. In this scenario, deepfakes could even become a force for good used in creative and positive ways.
That's an interesting thought. We've been so focused on the dangers that we haven't really considered the potential benefits. What are some of the ways deepfakes could be used for good?
There are a lot of possibilities. For example, deepfakes could be used in education to create immersive historical reenactments or to bring literary characters to life. Imagine students being able to interact with virtual versions of historical figures or fictional characters. It would completely change the way we learn.
Oh, that'd be amazing.
Yeah.
It would be like stepping into a history book or a novel. I can see how that would make learning so much more engaging.
Exactly. And in the entertainment industry, deepfakes can be used to create incredibly realistic special effects or to let actors play multiple roles without needing complicated makeup or costumes.
Right, like the de-aging technology they used in some recent movies. That was pretty impressive.
Exactly. And accessibility, deepfakes could be used to create synthetic voices for people who have lost their ability to speak.
Wow, that's incredible. So many possibilities. It's a reminder that technology isn't good or bad in itself. It's all about how we use it.
Exactly. The future of deepfakes depends on the choices we make today. Will we use it to deceive and manipulate, or will we use its power for good?
It's a question we should all be asking ourselves.
Absolutely. The stakes are high, and the decisions we make now will have a big impact on the future.
Well, that's a lot to think about. We've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive, looking at the ethics, the latest developments, and what the future might hold for deepfake technology. And I have to say, I'm feeling a mix of emotions: fascinated, concerned, and even a little bit hopeful.
I think that's the right way to feel. It's a complicated and constantly changing landscape, and it's important to approach it with the sense of caution and curiosity.
You're right, we can't let fear stop us from doing anything, but we also can't be naive about the potential dangers.
Exactly. It's about finding that balance, that sweet spot where we can embrace the possibilities while also being careful about the risks.
Well said, and I think that's a perfect lead into the last part of our deep dive, where we'll focus on what you, our listener, can do to navigate this complex world and protect yourself from the potential harm of deepfakes.
We'll be back soon with practical tips, resources, and advice to help you stay informed, stay safe, and stay skeptical in the age of deepfakes.
So don't go anywhere, listener. The deep dive continues in just a moment. Okay, listener, welcome back to the final part of our deep dive into the world of deepfakes.
We've talked about a lot of stuff.
Yeah, we have.
The technology behind deepfakes, how dangerous they can be, and even what the future might look like for this rapidly changing field.
We've had those moments of, whoa, that's cool, and oh no, that's scary, sometimes both at the same time.
It's definitely a wild topic, but now we're going to switch gears and focus on you.
Exactly. We've talked a lot about the big picture stuff, but now let's get practical. What can our listeners do to protect themselves from deepfakes?
It really all starts with awareness, just knowing that deepfakes exist, understanding the basics of how they work, and recognizing the potential dangers is a huge step in the right direction.
So knowledge is power,
Right.
but it's not enough to just know about them,
Yeah.
right? We need to know what to do when we see one.
Absolutely. And that's where a healthy dose of skepticism comes in. You can't believe everything you see or hear online. You have to question the source, look for things that don't add up, and be extra careful with content that's trying to get a big reaction out of you.
Right. It's easy to get caught up in the outrage or the excitement of a viral video or audio clip, but that's what deepfakes are designed to do. They want to play on your emotions, to grab your attention and make you want to share it.
Exactly. So next time you see something online that's really pushing your buttons, take a minute, pause, breathe, and ask yourself, is this real? Could this be a deepfake?
It's like they say, if it seems too good to be true, it probably is. But how can we actually verify if something we see online is real?
That's where fact-checking comes in. There are some great resources out there like Snopes and factcheck.org that can help you figure out if something is legitimate or fake. Also, look for evidence from reliable news sources. If you see a video or audio clip going around on social media, check if major news outlets are reporting the same story. And be wary of content that's only on shady websites or social media accounts.
So do your research basically don't just blindly trust what you see in your feed? But what about when it's not some big news story, but something more personal? Like, what if you see a deepfake of yourself or someone you know? What should you do then?
That's a really good question, and it's something more and more people are having to deal with as deepfakes become easier to make. The first thing you should do is report it to the platform where you saw it. Most social media companies have rules against using deepfakes in harmful ways, so reporting them helps keep them in check.
Okay, so report it to the platform. Got it. What else can you do? It's got to feel pretty creepy to have your face used in a deepfake, even if it's not doing anything specifically bad.
It is a violation of your digital identity, and it
Mm.
can be really disturbing if you think you've been the victim of a deepfake that's caused you harm, like damage to your reputation or harassment. Think about getting legal help.
There are laws against things like defamation, harassment, and identity theft that might apply in this situation.
Right. It's important to know your rights and what you can do if someone's using deepfakes to hurt you.
Yeah.
But let's switch gears for a second. We've been talking about how to protect ourselves from deepfakes that other people make, but what about the stuff we create and share ourselves? That's a really important point. We all need to be careful about our digital footprint. The photos, videos, and audio we put online can be used to make deepfakes. The more you share publicly, the easier it is for someone to create a deepfake of you.
Okay, so does that mean we all need to stop posting photos and videos online? I love sharing those cute pictures of my cat. Is that putting me at risk?
It's not about disappearing from the internet completely, but it's smart to think about what you're sharing and who you're sharing it with. Change your privacy settings on social media. Be picky about which platforms you use, and don't share sensitive info unless you have to.
So be mindful, be selective, be cautious. Got it. But I think this brings up a bigger point. We need to be more aware of our online identities in general. Deepfakes are just one part of this whole trend, people messing with and exploiting our online selves.
You're absolutely right. We need to start seeing our digital likenesses as parts of ourselves worthy of the same respect and protection as our physical bodies.
I like that that's a good way to think about it. So we've talked about what individuals can do to protect themselves, but what about the bigger picture? What can we do as a society to handle this threat?
As we talked about earlier, it's going to take a multi-pronged approach. We need tech solutions, ethical guidelines, laws, and public education. It's a team effort for sure.
So we need everyone to be on board, from the tech people making those detection tools, to the lawmakers making the rules, to everyday folks learning how to spot a deepfake.
Exactly. We need researchers to keep developing those tools and policymakers to create laws that regulate the bad uses of deepfakes while still protecting free speech and creativity. We need social media companies to be more proactive about policing deepfakes on their platforms. And most importantly, we need to give people the knowledge and critical thinking skills to navigate this tricky landscape.
It's a reminder that we all have a part to play in this fight against deepfakes. We can't just sit back and expect someone else to fix it. We have to be active in shaping the future of this technology.
Well said. It's about taking responsibility for ourselves and for each other to make sure deepfakes are used ethically and for good.
Well, we've reached the end of our deep dive into the world of deepfakes, and wow, what a journey. I hope our listeners found it insightful, informative, and maybe even a little bit empowering.
We've explored this complex and ever-changing technology, but the conversation doesn't have to end here. Keep learning, exploring, and engaging with this topic.
Stay informed, stay curious, and stay skeptical. The future of deepfakes and the future of our digital world depends on it.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, stay safe out there, and don't forget to be skeptical.
And that's a wrap on the deep dive.